can share our faith, that we can have fellowship one with another, that we can just enjoy being in the presence of people that are in love with you. I pray tonight that your Holy Spirit would be given an opportunity to speak to us as we change horses, change realms, and go into the reign of one that was promised so long ago. In Jesus' name, amen. Dave's waiting for him. Can you hear me now? Oh, all right. All right. One of the things to remember about this battle on Mount Gilboa, the occasion, the location where the Israelites were, they were counting on the fact that if things went south, they could retreat up the mountain. Under normal circumstances, that might have been a positive strategy. But God wasn't punishing, disciplining only Saul. He was disciplining the nation of Israel because God had chosen David. Saul wouldn't give up the kingdom. And the people under Saul's reign didn't make that transition. They should have rebelled. They should have said something. They should have said, hey, Saul, you're not the one. It wasn't as if they didn't know it, because Saul himself had it on 2 different occasions told his army that David was chosen. And so because they didn't respond to that like they should have, they weren't about to escape, and so many in Israel died in this battle. Now, when Saul gets hit, he does not want to die at the hands of the Philistines. We saw in the occasion of Samson that Philistines were cruel. And the first thing they would have done to Saul is they wouldn't have killed him. They'd have tortured him. And in Samson's case, they plucked out his eyes. They might have even bound up his wounds so he would live longer. Because as hurt as he was, we don't know that he was going to die. I mean, he fell on a sword and he still wasn't dead. So, yeah, and when we get to 2 Samuel, we're going to find out that he's just thrashing because he doesn't have enough strength to pull the sword back out, and so he's stuck like a turtle on his back, and you know, one of Saul's downfalls in Samuel brought him to this. There was a group of people, a tribe, that had attacked Israel when Moses was leading them from Egypt to the promised land. And God had pronounced a curse upon them that they were supposed to be annihilated. And Saul was chosen for that job. Remember what the name of those people were? The Amalekites. The Amalekites. They were supposed to kill all the Amalekites, and Saul didn't. So, let's go to 2 Samuel. And Tim, would you start us off by reading first 5 verses?
2 Samuel what?
2 Samuel 1.
After the death of Saul, David returned from striking down the Amalekites and stayed in Ziklag 2 days. On the third day, a man arrived from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he came to David, he fell to the ground to pay him honor. "Where have you come from?" David asked him. He answered, "I have escaped from the Israelite camp." "What happened?" David asked. "Tell me." "The men fled from the battle," he replied. "Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan are dead." Then David said to the young man who brought him this report, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead?"
Ready to read? Yeah.
Sure.
Verses 6 through 10.
The young man who told him said, "By chance I have happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and behold, Saul was leaning on his spear. And behold, the chariots and the horsemen pursued him closely. When he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me. And I said, 'Here I am.' He said to me, 'Who are you?' And I answered him, 'I am an Amalekite.' Then he said to me, 'Please stand beside me and kill me, for agony has seized me because my life still lingers in me.' So I stood beside him and killed him, because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown which was on his head and the bracelet which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord."
Go back to chapter 31. And Marissa, would you read verses 5 and 6?
But his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid, and therefore Saul took his sword and fell on it. Sorry, that was before 5. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all of his men died together that same day.
Yes. In this chapter, it says Saul was dead. The armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, so he killed himself. Now, Marissa, go to verse 8.
Let me try to find it. So it happened the next day when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa.
After supposedly Saul was dead, Philistines come in looking for money, looking for resources, looking for wealth, booty. And they strip the slain. Everybody did that. I mean, that's just part of the benefits of war. You go in and take whatever you can. Now, if the Philistines found Saul, and they did, and they stripped the slain, and they did, what would they have grabbed right away? The crown and the bracelet. I mean, those are solid gold. So he wasn't dead. That's my whole point for this. He wasn't dead. The armor bearer freaked out, thought he was dead. He wasn't dead. Saul couldn't even kill himself. Talk about a poor shot. Man, how close do you have to be? And so, let's go on here. Matt, would you read verses 11 through 16 of chapter 1, 2 Samuel 1?
Then David took hold of his clothes and tore them, They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and his son Jonathan and for the people of the Lord and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David said to the young man who told him, "Where are you from?" And he answered, "I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite." Then David said to him, "How is it you were not afraid to stretch out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" And David called one of the young men and said, "Go cut him down." So he struck him and he died.
In 16.
And David said to him, "Your blood is on your head, for your mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed."
Saul is more possessed by the kingdom than he is possessing the kingdom. And for that reason, he knew he was going to die. Witch at Endor? She told him. And the kingdom was so important to him that he would rather die so that everybody knew he was king. Because a helmet is a little more protection than a crown. Crowns don't give you too much protection because they're cut out at the top. He was so intent on hanging on to his kingdom, nobody was going to take the kingship away from him. Not David, not God. And so the Philistines did. And killed by an Amalekite. The very people he didn't kill. And because the Amalekites are a physical representation of the flesh that just attacks us always. One more lesson. If you don't destroy the sin in your life, the sin in your life will destroy you. Because the flesh never gives up. Satan never gives up. And the Israelites, they were hiring Amalekites. David is down there in the southern part of the kingdom. He's fighting Amalekites. Israel's hiring them because there have been such an exodus of military men leaving Saul to pursue David that they've hired mercenaries to help them. And mercenaries aren't good when you're losing the battle because they've got no dog in the fight. So when the battle turns and you were hoping to get paid by Israel, wait a minute, we're getting our butts kicked here. I don't think we're going to get any money. They leave. Now, the other thing about Amalekites is they have never, ever, ever been afraid to attack God's people. Starting way back when they came out of Egypt. Remember, God had set in the minds of the people around Israel, God had set a fear in them so that pretty much they could march through that wilderness safe and secure, except for the Amalekites. They didn't care. They weren't afraid of God. They didn't respect God. So, this guy comes up, he sees the king, he sees the crown, he sees the bracelet. He says, man, oh man, my lucky day. Now, He could have just taken the crown and taken the bracelet, gold, gotten out of there, melted it down. He'd have been set for life. So why didn't he? Well, that's a Sunday school answer, and it's the right one.
Owning the crown makes you king, doesn't it?
The crown makes you king. Yes, he is. He could have had a great reward if he'd have melted that down. But he's thinking to himself, I'm going to take this, show it to David, and he's going to give me a cabinet position. I'm looking for, an IRA, 401k, something for my retirement years that I can just, put my feet up. So rather than just make off with the booty and have a nice payday, he's thinking to himself, boy, this crown is exactly what David wants. I'm going to become a kingmaker. Oh, man. So when do you suppose, because you can just see him, he is so anxious to, where's the king? I've got an important message for the king. I need to see King. Well, he wouldn't have called him that. He just called him David. Grinning from ear to ear, crown in one hand, bracelet in the other. Oh boy, I'm set for life. When do you suppose all of those smiles turn to horror? What?
Did he have time to do it?
Oh, you better believe it. You better believe it. Look at verse 11. When he took his clothes and tore them. Wait a minute, I wasn't expecting that kind of reaction. I thought he would say thank you. Man, David tore his clothes and started screaming. I'm thinking the Amalekite was saying to himself, uh-oh, I don't think this was a wise decision. So he's got plenty of time to think about it. You see? He gives him the crown, shows him the bracelet. David rends his clothes, and then all the people around him start mourning and weeping. And then finally they get around to it, and David comes back to him and said, "Where are you from? And how'd you come on this? Are you sure they're dead?" "Oh yeah, I killed them." Oh, verse 14. So, here he had a chance at holding gold. In verse 15, this is so Dave. "Hey, you, kill him." And that's it. None of this. I'm going to give you 12 paces head start. We're going to have a trial here and see, we want to make sure this was a murder. No, kill him. That's it. Kill him. Oh, wow. Now, you got your reading glasses on? Okay.
Where we at?
We're at 7. You're going to read, I want to hear your poetry voice. Yeah. Yeah. Verses 17 through 27. That's, wax eloquent for us.
Okay. And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and Jonathan his son, and he said, "It should be taught to the people of Judah, behold, it is written in the book of Jasar." He said, "Your glory, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How have the mighty fallen? Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Ascalon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised exult." How far?
Through 27, through the end of the chapter.
Okay. "You mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely in life, and in death they were not content. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. You daughters of Israel, who wept over Saul, who clothed you luxuriously in scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Jonathan lies slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished."
Yes. Boy. Of course, the Holy Spirit came upon David, so he was able to say this eulogy. But he starts out and he says, I want everyone to learn what was called the Song of the Bow. It was put in a book called Joshua. That book was a poetry book filled with the poems and stories of the heroes of Israel. Now, it was lost, but they refer to it a couple of different times. Here, David says, I want, because people were listening to David all the time, writing down what he would say, and he says, I want to teach this to you. Amazing, isn't it, that the spur of the moment, this man who was able to write all these psalms could come up with such a glorious, beautiful testimony. And he begins by saying, Israel, one of your finest has fallen. And then he mentions in 20 and 21, I don't want the Philistines. God, please keep the Philistines from knowing what happened. Of course, it didn't. You couldn't keep that from happening. But what David was asking God to prevent was for the maidens to come out as the warriors came home and start singing praises about the victory. That's what they did. And remember, after David would slaughter Philistines and he would come home, this was before Saul had his issues with David, the young maidens would come out and they sang that song. David, Saul is slain his thousands, David is tens of thousands. So David knows what's going to happen. And then he wants the mountains do not have any dew or rain because those shields are going to rust because they didn't have the oil to keep that from happening. And then he mentions the fact that he knows from a fact, because he knew Saul. There was a time when Saul was a good king. He knew Jonathan very well. So he was positive that they didn't die without taking a lot of Philistines with them. And warrior to warrior, man, him and Jonathan were tight. And that's where he says, I want to remind you, daughters of Israel, that when Saul began his reign and was a good king, he brought a lot of affluence to the nation of Israel. And you all prospered when he was doing what God wanted him to do. It wasn't as if he was a horrible king from the get-go. However, what was the one thing that the Israelites clamored to Samuel about? What was it that they wanted? What kind of king? Yeah. We want a king that's handsome. We want a king that's powerful. We want a king that can rule with an iron fist. We want a king like the nations. The problem with king like the nations is none of those kings were godly. How could they be? They weren't a part of the God kingdom. And they got exactly what they wanted. A king just like the other nations, not godly. Oh, be careful what you ask for. Because sometimes it happens. Samuel warned them. Samuel says, what are you guys thinking? And God says, let them do it. They are asking for it. Now, this bond between David and Jonathan, I want you to see this in verse 26 because this really bothers him. We got to remember David's past. He came from a broken home. We don't know that Jesse was even his dad, but we know that his mom was had him illegitimate. His brothers never accepted him. His home life was horrible. We read in Psalms, sometimes he wouldn't get anything to eat. Sometimes all that they would feed him was the spoiled and rotten stuff. So he didn't have a relationship with other males. I don't think his dad treated him very well. That's why he had him guarding the sheep. And David had multiple wives. And this is what is so tragic about this. David never, he had no idea of what the relationship between one man and one woman would be like. He only had multiple wives. So the only relationship he had with one person that was strong was Jonathan. And he mentions that. He said, I love that man more than any woman. Because multiple women. He didn't have an intimate relationship with just one. It was many. Huh? So this really shows how close those two were. This wasn't homosexual, not at all. It was a statement about the tragic relationship of multiple wives, something that God allowed, but God never, ever advocated. And then Solomon, he goes way overboard, like that was a good idea. Because they just turned him away from God. Okay, chapter 2. Who we at? Jenny, ready? Chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, please.
In the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah? He asked. The Lord said, go up. David asked, where shall I go? To Hebron, the Lord answered. So David went up there with his 2 wives, something of Jezreel of Abigail, the widow of Nabal in Carmel. David also took the men who were with him, each with his family, and they settled in Hebron and its towns. The men of Judah came to Hebron, and they anointed David king over the tribe of Judah. And David was told it was the men from Jezbel, Gilead, who had buried Saul. He sent messengers to them to say to them, "The Lord bless you for showing this kindness to Saul, your master, by burying him. May the Lord now show you kindness and faithfulness, and I will too show you the same favor because you have done this. Now then be strong and brave, for Saul, your master, is dead, and the people of Judah have anointed me king over them."
Very good. Now turn over to 1 Chronicles chapter 12. When David finally gets to Hebron, he's not just in Hebron, he's in all of the towns, or they're not cities, but all of the towns around Hebron. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, we don't really study Chronicles because it's like a continuation, but the priests gives us some insight. So we're going to go back. Now this is before Saul is killed. Okay, David is still in Ziklag. And these are the ones that came to David. And they were among the mighty men. Equipped with bows, they could use both the right hand and the left to sling stones and to shoot arrows. Wouldn't matter what side of the tree was on. They'd just come with the other hand. And they were some of Saul's kinsmen from Benjamin. You see that in verse 2? The chief was Ahiezer, then Joash, the son of Shemaiah, the Gibeathites, and Jeziel the Pelet, the sons of Amzabeth, and Berekah, Jehu the Anathite. Now these are Philistines, Canaanites here. And Ishmael the Gibeonite, a mighty man among the 30, over the 30. Then Jeremiah, Jehaziel, Johanan, Jozabad, the Gederathite, Eluzai, Jeremoth, Belial, Shemira, Shephatiah, the Haruthite, Elkanah, Ishiah, Azarel, Jozer, Jehoshavan, the Korathites. Now that Korah, that's Israel. Joelah, Zebediah, the sons of Jehoram of Gedor, that's in Israel. From the Gadites, Israel, there came over to David in the stronghold in the wilderness mighty men of valor, trained for war, who could handle shield and spear, whose faces were like the faces of lions, swift as gazelles on the mountains. Ezer was the first, Obadiah the second, Eliab the third, Mishmannah the fourth, Jeremiah the fifth, Attai the sixth, Eliel the seventh, Johanan the eighth, Elzabad the ninth, Jeremiah the 10th, Maccabenai the 11th. These of the sons of Gad were captains of the army. He who was least was equal to 100, and the greatest to 1,000. One man could handle 1,000 enemies.
We think this is something that grew up.
These are the ones who crossed the Jordan in the first month when it was overflowing all its banks, and they put to flight all those in the valleys, both to the east and to the west. Then some of the sons of Benjamin and Judah came to the stronghold of David. David went out to meet them and said to them, "If you come peacefully to me to help me, my heart shall be united with you. But if to betray me to my adversaries, since there is no wrong in my hands, may the God of our fathers look on it and decide." And the Spirit came upon Amasa, chief of the 30, and he said, "We're yours, David. And with you, son of Jesse." These were coming from Saul's army. Hundreds and hundreds of men. It's It's no mystery that the Philistines defeated them on Mount Gilboa. David had taken the cream of the crop, and he had not recruited a single soldier. They wanted to come and fight for him. Yeah, and these men turned into fighting machines. And so but David's learned his lesson here. He was a man without a country. Remember, he was lying to Achish of the Philistines. He was afraid of Saul of Israel. So he's down in Ziklag. He doesn't even know what's going on. And he's slaughtered the Amalekites, but he's waiting. And so finally, in chapter 2, verse 1, he says, because he's getting smarter, he says, I've done a lot of things on my own, and brother, I'm not as smart as I think I am. So he pulls in the priest, Abiathar, and he says, would you ask God a question for me? What am I supposed to do next? Where should I go? And God said, go to Hebron. Now that's not Jerusalem. We're still down in the land of Judah. Yes. Because he was going to go with the Philistines and didn't know how to get out of it. God stepped in, and the common soldiers of the Philistines said to the king, if David and all of his guys are coming, we're not going. Because we're afraid that if they turn on us, we're going to die. So Achish comes back to David and he said, man, I know your heart is so pure. For 16 months, he'd just been raking him. I mean, taking money right out of his mouth. And Achish says, I know that you are just like an angel of the Lord, but my men don't trust you. So you're going to have to go home. Well, when they turn around and get back to Ziklag, they discovered that the Amalekites had come and raided their village, taken all their possessions, all the women, all the children. Fortunately, God's providence, the Amalekites decided they were going to sell the women and children rather than kill them. David always just killed them. And so that's where they were, slaughtering these Amalekites because they touched David's men and David's wives, children. And those First Chronicles are read to those guys. Yeah. You touch my kids, you're not going to have any hands to touch anything again. And so they were down there slaughtering these Amalekites while Saul was being slaughtered. And so they just are waiting. And they're waiting. And finally God says, go to Hebron. So up he goes. Brought all of his men, who now numbered in the thousands. Remember, they had 600 to begin. Now they're in the thousands. And these are no longer the debts and the ones that are outcast, the ones that just are no good. Now he's got soldiers. I mean, shoot a bow left or right-handed. Just, oh boy. So, they get to Hebron here in Judah, and his men anoint him king. The men of Judah came. They were in on the coronation. They probably didn't have a whole lot to say because they looked at these soldiers, and especially the ones that had faces like lions. They said, wow, these guys are serious. Whatever they say, let's just do it, okay? And yeah. They looked like they were homeless. So, in verse 7, he says, listen, Saul, your Lord, is dead, so accept me. There were how many tribes in Israel? 12. Judah is the only one that really responds to Hebron, which means how many are left? Yeah. And he wants to unify them, but there's a problem. So Kim, verses 8 through 11.
Abner, son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, even over all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel. And he was king for 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. All the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months.
Okay. He wants to unite the tribes, make them more powerful. I mean, he's got a machine. But Abner, who was Saul's right-hand man, a position originally that David had held. After David killed Goliath, Saul made him commander-in-chief. And then when Saul went nutso, David lost that position. Abner took over. Abner was Saul's uncle. If you remember when Saul was out looking for the donkeys and Samuel had anointed him, when he came back home, it was Abner, that met him and said, hey, what's going on? What happened? And Saul didn't tell him about his meeting with Samuel. So Abner is the commander, and it makes me wonder if he was Saul's right-hand man, where was he in the battle? Remember when David snuck into the camp and he yelled at Abner? He said, hey, Sleepy, aren't you supposed to be guarding that guy? You know, the one that has the spear. Oh, wait a minute. He doesn't have the spear next to his head anymore because I've got it. I mean, Oriental, talk about losing face. He humiliated Abner in front of all the men. Probably, Dave, would have been a better idea. Because Abner was upset. Made him look like a fool. I have no idea where he was during the battle. But he wasn't out there fighting. Because all the leaders of the Israelite army were killed. Ishbosheth, I get it why he wasn't killed, because he was probably being held back in case the top three boys of Saul's died in the battle. So Ishbosheth, there he is. Besides, who'd want to go to war if your name was Ishbosheth? I mean, if they caught you, they're going to start torturing you, name, rank, and serial number, they would fall asleep by the time you got finished telling them your name. My name is Ishbosheth. What? Can you spell that? No. So, huh? No bow. David was king in Hebron for 7 years because of this animosity with Abner. Now, I'm not sure when this takes place, but there's a bad blood brewing. Joab is David's nephew because his mom is David's sister, right? Nephew? Is that right, Marissa? Okay, who's up? Amy, would you read verses 12 through 17?
Now Abner the son of Ner went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon with the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul. And Joab the son of Zeruiah and the servants of David went out and met them by the pool of Gibeon, and they sat down, one on the one side of the pool and the other on the other side of the pool. Then Abner said to Joab, "Now let the young men arise, and hold a contest before us." And Joab said, "Let them arise." So they arose and went over by count 12 for Benjamin and Ishbosheth the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. Each one of them seized his opponent by the head and thrust his sword in his opponent's side, so they fell down together. Therefore the place was called Helkath-Hazzurim, which is in Gibeon. That day the battle was very severe, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David.
This was, I don't think, because of the words in the Hebrew, I don't think that this was intended to be a battle to the death. I think that what Abner and then Joab agreed, I think what they were hoping for was just going to be a little, fisticuffs, hand to hand, where they would kind of maul each other, and just march around and not really do anything. Big time wrestling. Yeah, big time wrestling. But the fly in that ointment is they got close enough to each other, and they don't have any shields because they couldn't hold on to one hand and have a knife in the other. They get close enough to each other, and they grab their face, the beard, which is why I'm clean shaven. They grabbed the beard with one hand and stabbed with the other, all 12 at the same time. 24 guys hooked together, beard, knife. They just fell over and died. Well, that wasn't very exciting. I mean, it's over already? Oh, my word. That is in verse 15. 16. Really, 16. Now, as soon as that happens, and these are young guys. These aren't the grizzled, seasoned soldiers, because they would say, no way. I didn't get to be this old by doing something stupid like that. I'm not going to do that. So these are young guys. And they're probably trying to make a name for themselves, get a reputation. Hey, boy, this guy's bad. Look at him. Goes in there and beats up somebody else. So as soon as they killed each other, David's men who obviously, from what we read in Chronicles, have got much more oompa than Saul's guys. As soon as they see those killed, they go nuts. And they leap into the fray. They start killing Abner's men left and right, and Abner's men take off. They start running away. And Abner too. He said, oh man, get out of here. So he hops on his chariot. What a criminal. I don't think that's fair. Everybody else there's on foot. He pulls up because he's like, representing the king, Ishbosheth, in a chariot. All right, Tim, you're up. 18 through 23.
The three sons of Uriah were Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Now Asahel was a fleet-footed as a wild gazelle. He chased Abner, turning neither to the right or to the left as he pursued him. Abner looked behind him and asked, "Is that you, Asahel?" "It is," he answered. Then Abner said to him, "Turn aside to the right or the left, take on one of the young men, and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel would not stop chasing him. Again Abner warned Asahel, "Stop chasing me. Why should I strike you down? How could I look your brother Joab in the face?" But Asahel refused to give up the pursuit, so Abner thrust the butt of his spear into Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He fell there and died on the spot, and every man stopped when he came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died.
Okay. Of the three brothers, Joab, Abishai, Asahel would have been the youngest. And because he's so young, he's fast. And it doesn't, this guy's in a chariot. He's in a chariot. And this young kid is, he's gaining on him. And Joab says, "Is that you?" We've gone to picnics before. I've seen how fast you are in the three-legged, bag race. Why don't you just pick on somebody your own size? If it's a trophy you're looking for, man, just kill. What a compassionate man. Why don't you just kill one of my men? That would make me feel better. And then you'd have your trophy. You'd go back and say, hey, killed somebody, got their sword, I got their shield. No, I'm after you, and I'm going to run you down. Now, the spears that they're talking about often had a metal bottom that was filed into a point so that they could stick it in the ground. Because if you've ever tried to put the flags in here prior to Red, White, and Blue Sunday, those little flags, even though the poles aren't very big, they're flat, and it's hard to get them in the ground. So we usually take a poker that's got a point, jab that in there, right, Kim? So they have these spears, and the reason it had a point on it was they made them that way so they'd stick in the ground. And he keeps warning this young kid, "Stop chasing me," but he wasn't going to do it. So he pulls the horse back, comes to a stop, and that kid was running. And I imagine that at the last minute, he put that spear up because it had such force, went through his belly, came out his back. Then he just left him. And And there he is, laying alongside of the road, just like all the deer on 131. Only praise God, Kent County residents don't stop when they see one of those, deer off the side of the road. Because, man, wouldn't that be a mess if we stopped every time we come up on a dead deer? We just go by. County will pick them up. Huh? Eventually, yeah. They wait till they get ripe, and then they pick them up. Only for some of us. Okay, so now he's killed somebody that he knows. They're not blood, but they were all in Saul's army at one time. Okay. Let's quit right there. Spaghetti.